Hi everybody, welcome back to episode 2 of the Downlore.
Our first real episode where we're specifically diving into one series, Crescent City by Sarah J. Maas, House of Earth and Blood, and House of Sky and Breath.
Books 1 and 2.
In anticipation of
book number 3, House of Flame and Shadow, which comes out on January 30th, 2024, which is 17 days from the day that we are recording this. So
17 days. I have been waiting longer than a gestational pregnancy, like a human pregnancy, for this. I read the other 2 Crescent City books, the first 2, last February, and
she got a little bit of reprieve about 4 or 5 months into that gestational period because I read Crescent City 1 and 2.
Right, like I had nobody else to talk about it with for the longest time, and it felt like being an unopened soda can that's just been shaken. Once by House of Earth and Blood,
volcano.
Again by House of Sky and Breath, and the ending, the cliffhanger it ends on, left me breathless, speechless. There was nothing but one little tiny brain cell ping-ponging around my brain. It was all I could think about. We should be
She had the whole brain cell during that period of time.
Yes. We should be very explicit. We will be spoiling absolutely everything.
Mm-hmm.
There is going to be content from A Court of Thorns and Roses that comes into our conversations as well. And straight out the bat,
a few pieces from Throne of Glass that Claudia will throw in there. I have given consent to be spoiled.
Just slightly. They're little things. But if you haven't read Throne of Glass, A Court of Thorns and Roses, and Crescent City, just be warned. Just be forewarned. Like right off the bat, the cliffhanger that we are all sitting on, crossover episode loading.
Hello, Bryce, darling.
I am living. Okay, so I just for 2 seconds, when I was in the 10th grade, I had one of the most iconic English teachers ever. And Charlie was his name. And we called all of our teachers by their first names in my high school because it was weird and hippy dippy and we loved it. Anyway, so Charlie would constantly do this thing where anytime we finished a book in class, he would give us a quiz on it. And the extra credit question for the quiz anytime we finished a book would be, what is the last word of the book? Because he maintained that the last word is like the last taste that the author is giving you. I judge my books very harshly based on just the last word, because if it's just a generic bullshit last word, I feel like it doesn't serve any purpose. I'm like, okay, they clearly didn't think enough.
So Claudia, I have to ask, what's the last word in Crescent City 2, House of Sky and Breath?
Well, okay, so I just opened to the last page, and when I saw the word resand, all of me just died. And so I spoiled it for myself, okay, just by turning to the last page. And I have since learned I can't be doing that anymore because I'm going to hurt myself.
To be fair, I also knew that it was coming when I was reading the book. And my body was still full of joy and suspense throughout the entire roller coaster, knowing that it was coming. I just didn't know how we were going to get there. I had theories and guesses, but none of them were correct. Let's just
Natalie
put it that way.
An 11-minute voice memo before she had even read Crescent City, just gushing about how much good shit we are in store for now that we're heading into the crossover episode. So we are here to just absolutely gush over it. And the good, the weird, everything.
And trust me, there's a whole lot of weird. There is a whole lot of weird in these books. And I loved it. But it's there.
Yeah, so let's get straight into it. Let's talk about the who. Let's talk about the characters, who we love, who we hate, who's hot, who's not.
First of all, I just want to say we have 11 pages of notes for this episode. So just bear with us, because this could be a lengthy one.
She's thick.
If you're watching the video, we have both books on the table here. They're about 700 pages apiece. They are thick with about 7 C's at the end. And we're going to delve into it all. So back to your question, the who did we love? Who did we hate? Who are we indifferent to? There is a long cast of characters to parse through for this question.
Mm-hmm. So many characters.
Arguably too many characters, especially when we get into the second book. There was a core main cast in book 1, but in book 2, clearly Sarah is preparing to expand the world, setting up for the crossover episodes, possibly another series, possibly the next and final, I think, my guess, next and final book after House of Flame and Shadow, considering that each of the books so far has been named after one of the houses in Crescent City, which we will explain a little bit more later. There are 4 of them.
Right.
Clearly, if they're all named after a house, there's going to be 4 books. And the final house that hasn't been named yet is the House of Many Waters.
Right. We can't leave her out.
And we had a lot of Therion content in book 2. Therion is a merman, for those of you who haven't read the series, which tells me I think House of Many Waters is going to be a Therion spin-off of some sort. This is a complete crack theory. Nothing has been announced. I'm speculating, but that's my guess. We haven't had an announcement that House of Flame and Shadow is the finale. And if House of Many Waters is the remaining book, 2 + 2 = 4, you know? Therion is going to be front and center stage, which I have mixed feelings about because I don't know how I feel about him as a character. He's just kind of there. He's a little erratic and unpredictable. He's a shameless flirt, which can be fun to a certain degree.
But it's his whole personality.
But his whole personality is to be a shameless flirt and to hate his fiance and to hate his people, the river people. He is like the Little Mermaid. Like, he wants legs. And in fact, in Crescent City 2, he makes a deal with the Viper Queen.
Sells out.
To get legs.
Yeah.
So, I don't know how I feel about that. It'll be interesting to see if Sarah does, like, ACOTAR. The first ACOTAR was a Beauty and the Beast retelling. It would be kind of interesting to see a Little Mermaid retelling with Therion, a man at the center of it, who has motives outside of romance to be kind of like leading man in House of Many Waters. So we'll see. That's less of our focal point for today, but just wanted to note that we have more to come in Therion's story, I'm sure.
Can we just talk about our bestie Bryce?
We have to talk about bestie Bryce
We must.
first and foremost, because we will not tolerate any Bryce slander or haters in this household, okay? I just want to put that out there as number 1.
She's an absolute queen. I think that Sarah J. Maas, she has said in interviews that writing Crescent City was kind of her way of blowing off steam, and it was a side project and all of this. And you can just tell in the writing and the characters that she was on like unserious mode.
My girl was having a ball writing this book. There
and it
are
is
messenger
so
otters
good because of
it. We love the messenger otters. We love Jelly Jubilee. We love the reality TV. We love that there is a scene in which Hunt drops his new phone in water on one of their missions, and he's like, I'm so glad that Bryce convinced me to get the water resistant insurance for my new phone. Like, so
unserious.
Majorly unserious. But we loved it.
But
I
it's
ate it up.
so real.
So real and so fun. And
Bryce went to get her nails done just to piss off a man and get intel. But like, and she
made him stand in the rain.
She made him stand in the rain and did not tell him that there was a legitimate reason behind her going to the nail salon for like 24 hours. And she fully admitted that it was just to make him squirm.
She's iconic.
Please.
So, Bryce, she is our favorite curvy redheaded baddie. She is center stage in this book. I personally loved her in large part because she is a full-ass adult.
Amen.
Whereas I am not into this trope across romantasy, especially of baby teenage girl and hundreds of years old fae prince / angel person in love. And we do have some of that because Hunt is an old man, but he looks 27,
32,
sure,
maybe.
And Bryce is 25, 26
Perfect.
in these books, so we'll give it a pass because at least she has a fully formed frontal lobe,
correct,
unlike some other people. Farrah.
Even Aelin, like, let's be real.
Aelin was a child.
Homegirl's what, 18, 19, 20,
Homegirl
like,
literally
over the course of this?
18 in a slave camp.
It's just, we're over.
By the way, also, what is with these, like, pseudo-orphaned female main characters who are children, like, malnourished, have to have crazy survival mechanism, hunting skills, slave survival, like...
It's just too much. It's too much. No. Just, like, give me a girl who, like, went to college, partied, and then, like...
Party princess, living life.
Party princess. And then just like went through a little traumatic event and is now dealing with the aftermath over the course of 799 pages.
And we're going to get into the traumatic event in a big way.
Well, Sarah puts us through a traumatic event literally within the first 70 pages, so you have no choice but to get into it.
Oh, but we also get into it in a much bigger way than just the traumatic event itself. There are so many ripple effects of this traumatic event that we cannot wait to unpack. But before we do that, I want to touch on an interesting topic, which is the use of redheads in fantasy. So there's this trope across, and I'm gonna shout out my girl Carrie Can Read from YouTube. I love you so much, girl. She did a whole video about redheads in fantasy, and to just paraphrase and summarize, redheads are white people usually, and for a long time in fantasy, you're creating this fantastical world, right, where things are unlike they are in this world, and the main character has some special power, some edge that makes them different. And a very easy aesthetic differentiator that you can use to make somebody different is their appearance, obviously. But for a long time, people writing fantasy, mostly European people, were mega racist. And so what's a very easy way to make a different looking, edgy person that's still white, make them a redhead? So for many centuries, there have been redheads in these books that have some like quirk, and as a result of this like kind of racist tradition and correlation, there's now this subconscious bias that redheads are like fiery, different, have this edge to them. Bryce definitely checks that box. So I just wanted to touch on that because I think it's fascinating and just interesting history and context about redheads in general. It has nothing to do with Crescent City. Just
we love a little history lesson though. See, whoever said that reading fantasy is an intellectual, please. As
I said in the intro episode, we are gonna academically and critically think about these very unserious books with otters and jelly jubilee in them, okay?
And shadow daddies.
Most importantly. Let's get into the shadow daddies. How about Mr. Rune? Mr. Rundanen.
Anytime I see his name on a page, all of my insides flutter. I'm not gonna lie. He is so hot. He is Skrillex in
I was
Feyworld.
just gonna say this Skrillex haircut is a little bit. I'm a little averse to the Skrillex haircut, but we can give it a pass because he is a king inside.
And honestly, like, will eventually be...
He will eventually be a king.
Our Fae king.
Unless, I can't remember, did the Autumn King, like, flip-flop their places? Like, is Bryce crown princess, even though she's younger? I can't remember if that was a thing, because she, like, surpassed him in starborn power.
This is so true. We shall see.
We shall see.
We shall see.
All I know is that Hunt is a prince now.
Hunt's a prince. Rune is still a king in my mind. And he's just, you know, I think he goes on a really interesting character development journey from book one through to the end of book one. There's like a change when obviously Bryce becomes starborn, and kind of, like you said, their roles kind of get flip-flopped in terms of power. And then into book two, he goes from hating Bryce and them having a contentious relationship because of some big fight that they had, which was stupid. And then eventually they reconcile and he becomes like supportive big brother, and he's like proud of her, and like that is what we want. That is what we love to see in our men.
Rune is one of the rare men, not rare as a man written by a woman, but rare men in general that can admit when somebody else is better than them at something. Rune is well aware that Bryce is more powerful than him, and he is more than happy to take a back seat to Bryce's starborn power, and that is a big part of why we love him. He's also so just a respectful, funny, silly guy.
Right. Like, he looks like a frat bro on the outside. Well, he doesn't look like a frat bro.
No, he looks like Skrillex.
But he acts like a frat bro, like lives in a frat house with his fratty fae friends. But like at the core, he's just a softy, good dude. And like you said, he is secure enough to know that like he can admit when he's wrong, when someone's better than him at something, and he does not take that as like a threat to himself and his masculinity.
Exactly. He handed over that star sword.
He said, "It's yours, bestie."
A water bottle. Like,
right.
He said, here's your Stanley Cup, babe. You can have it. I don't need it anymore. I got a hydro flask.
So that's Rune.
Let's touch on Hunt, because
Hunt is so boyfriend.
Hunt is so
boyfriend.
He's so Ken. He's just Ken. His job is Bryce. And
literally.
We love that.
Literally. We love a man whose like life is defined by his relationship to his woman.
And his goals and missions are driven by what Bryce is driven by, which is the mystery of Danica's murder, which we will get into, and we will talk about Danica because I have mixed feelings about my girl Danica as well.
There's so much to talk about with Danica.
And she's also driven by this budding human rebellion situation. Bryce is half human, half fae. So
she's literally split down the middle.
She's split down the middle. There's this whole lore mythology about the creation, inception of this planet that they live on called Midgard, and the foundation of Crescent City, the city in which they live. There are all of these different mythical magical creatures called Vanir or Vaynir. I say Vaynir because it's just, I don't know.
You know, I think this is a good opportunity to just touch on the fact that we will mispronounce about 50% of the words and names of people and places and things that Sarah J. Maas has written, and other authors as well. This is a pronunciation inclusive space. The only thing you cannot mispronounce is Rhysand. That's it.
Rhysand, like Reese's Pieces and Reese and, not Rice and. It's I'm sorry, that's the one that we have to
draw
put
the
our
line.
foot down on.
We draw the line there, but everything else you pronounce however you want,
If
and
you
don't
wanna
come at
call-
us for mispronouncing anything.
Well, and Aylin. Can't be Eileen. Can't be
Island.
Yeah,
No.
It's Aylin as well.
Yeah.
I think those are the two that I have to stand on with both feet. I don't know what the phrase is, but yeah, we're putting a stake in the ground. Aylin and Rhysand. You can pronounce Feyre, Fairy if you want. I don't care. But those are the two we got to get right. Anyways, the Vanir is just an umbrella term for all of these magical beings, which includes lots of different stuff. Witches, vampires, werewolves, fae, angels, and
all of whom
the Asteri
are
Vanir or no? Vanir.
No, I think I don't think they're
different-
considered that. They're just gods, considered gods. Okay. But of course, all of these magical creatures are then organized into subgroups, which are the four houses. Then there's the humans, who are just the trash.
And there's lesser magical beings as well. I don't remember if there's a term for them, but they're
just the lowers.
Right, exactly. They're lower than Vaynir, but they are still magical. Like Lahaba, the fire sprite, is a prominent character in book 1.
God, Lahaba.
Love her.
She's so cute.
Cutie patootie. And
Syrinx,
the dog chimera situation.
Thingy.
How do you picture Syrinx?
Like a mix of a pug and a lion.
Yeah, I pictured him as like a pug with angel wings and really sharp teeth.
Yeah, and they describe him as having a lion's tail and a little bit of a lion's mane, which I heavily relate to, honestly, if you're watching on video. I do also have a little bit of a lion's mane. But then like scrunched up and roly-poly like a French bulldog or a pug.
Right. Very interesting picture in my brain for that one, but
also
cute.
Also can teleport and do weird things.
One time he teleported outside across the street where Hunt was
watching from the rooftop.
Watching Bryce from the rooftop through the window, and he
literally just to bite Hunt in the ass.
And then
that's
just
it.
Disappeared right back into the apartment.
This is what we're talking about with Sarah being unserious. Like, that is so not important to the plot.
And you want to know what Hunt did immediately after he got bit in the ass?
What?
Called his friend on the phone and said,
"You'll never guess.
This fucking dog just
Did
bit
you know
me in the
that
ass."
these creatures can teleport?" And Isaiah was like, "I'm sorry, you're calling me for this?"
He was like, "I looked so silly. Like, the dog came in, bit me on the ass, and I was just scratching my own ass. Of course, when Bryce looked out the window to see me, and I looked like an idiot."
So unserious, but I fucking love it so much.
I adore it.
I like giggle reading this book because there are unserious moments like this that are just everything.
It's the silliest, and I love it. Jelly Jubilee is a secondary silliness.
Iconic. That is so iconic.
I think about Jelly Jubilee a lot.
Yeah.
I would like one. Do you think Jelly Jubilee is plush, or is it like a plastic collectible unicorn horse? That's how I picture it. It was like My Little Pony vibes.
Yes, it's giving My Little Pony.
Yeah. Or like, did you ever have those? I'm a horse girl, so excuse me if this is a really niche thing to say. I think they were called Breyer horses. They're very anatomically accurate, different horse breeds. They're just plastic.
Right. Yeah.
And you could buy, they were absurdly expensive for no reason, but they were just like scale models of different horse breeds.
Right.
And lots of people collected them. I had several.
I had 0 of them, but I did have My Little Ponies.
That's how I pictured it. It was kind of like those, but just like purple with a unicorn horn for Jelly Jubilee.
I'm just unwell at the fact that made it into the book, and I love it.
Love it. And the fact that Hunt thought they were vibrators.
Like, so iconic. Which, honestly, again, he's just Ken. How is he supposed to know?
He is just
He's
Ken.
just
He wears
Ken.
a backwards baseball cap and everything.
It's so hot.
Love him. Okay, so we have Hunt, we have Bryce, we have Rune.
Let's talk about Danica.
We have to unpack the beast. The
let's
elephant
attack
in the room, the wolf in the room. Miss Danica.
Okay, so let's start from the very beginning. We meet Danica. She's this fiery, like, wolf shifter, werewolf shifter, whatever they officially call her. And she's Bryce's best friend. And Bryce is like, I don't need a man because I have Danica. And then, like, 60 something pages in, Danica literally gets unalived along with her entire pack, and it is incredibly traumatic. And this is the big event that really spurs on the entire plot of the first novel.
And in that one scene, there are so many little tidbits of information that become extremely important later on in the plot. So,
right,
first and foremost, the incident happens when Bryce, our queen party princess, is just, when we call her party princess at first, she knows she's a princess technically because she is the daughter of the Autumn King. So she is technically a fae princess, even though she's half human, but she hasn't made what they call the drop yet.
Right. So she has not, like, stepped into her
immortality.
Into the what,
by the way. We decided we're going to structure these in the same format we did with the intro of who, what, when, where, why.
Right.
We just think that will be all encompassing.
The 5 W's.
So we're kind of venturing into what territory with this bridge here with Danica.
Right.
But
she is the connection between the who and the what, as she is the connection between a lot of things.
Oh, Danica.
And Natalie has a little bit of a diatribe about Danica and how Sarah uses her basically as
a literary crutch.
Correct.
She is a scapegoat for everything. If something needs to happen, Danica did it before she died mysteriously somehow. As a college student who had this secret Hannah Montana double life. I don't know how she did it.
So like, Bryce gets home, she's cracked out basically on Lightseeker, which is just crack. And
like, quite literally, I think that's kind of the analog in our world.
Right. And, like, all hell's broken loose, like, shit's gone down, and Danica is gone. So this we have to backtrack a second. So the drop. Oh, yes. Okay.
They haven't made the drop yet, which is an instrumental factor in this scene. The drop is when Vayner, at a certain age, they become immortal. So you're not immortal until you make the drop. Mm-hmm. When you make the drop, you have to have somebody anchoring you to the world. So there's someone there to, like, hold your hand while you do the drop. And what it is you, like, it's like meditation kind of. You, like, close your eyes and you drop into the depths of your power, and then with this person anchoring you to the world, you, like, run as fast as you can up your own little mind bridge back into the world, and suddenly you're immortal and frozen at the age that you are when you do the drop.
Yep.
And so there's this whole situation where Bryce and Danica were waiting until they decided arbitrarily 27 is the correct age to make the drop for them. So they were waiting as besties to be 27 and make the drop together. And so both of them are not immortal yet, because this happens when they're like 23 or 24.
Yep.
And so Bryce is out partying on Lightseeker at the club. She gets home and discovers a crazy scene that she can't tell whether she's hallucinating or not. It is just all of her friends, including Danica, in just piles of raw flesh on the ground.
They're
disturbing
they're
image.
Just pulp. honestly.
They're just pulp on the ground. And she's like, the door is still open. Like, whatever did this has to still be here. Somehow she's fighting off the shock, thanks to the light seeker, is like not phased yet by what she just saw.
Right. There's just a lot at war in her system. Adrenaline, light seeker, and whatever the crack is in Fae blood that is trying to fight off all of it.
And so, because Danica hasn't made the drop, she's dead. So that's why I want to explain what the drop was before we got into all of this. But she knew that the thing that did it had to still be nearby. So naturally, she scurries back out in her tiny dress and high heels to find this thing.
She took the high heels off. She's fucking barefoot at this point.
Okay, she's barefoot. Raw dogging the ground. And she's running to find this thing, and she gets outside and she runs into this alley, and there's this demon. By the way, there's demons in this book too. There's everything.
We're gonna have to talk about where the demons come from in hell and like all of that.
We'll get to that in the where.
Yep.
The where of it all. And so she finds this demon in this alley, and it is just chowing down on an angel, and the angels are like kind of like the police government in Crescent City and across this world of Midgard. So some powerful being is being devoured in this alley. Somehow Bryce fights it off. She finds like a shard of glass. I don't remember.
It's a table leg, y'all. Like,
right,
this girl, this cracked out half fae, half human girl with a table leg,
drunk on Lightseeker,
like off her ass, fights off this demon that, who we come to find out is Micah, the archangel,
and technically like the governor of Crescent City.
Right, exactly. That he couldn't fight off.
Right. So very powerful demon. And it's leaves this like clear venom around. Bryce gets
gashed in the thigh.
Yeah. And
has perpetual pain afterwards, which becomes important.
She has like demon venom in her thigh, and she just refuses to see a doctor about it, which we'll get into. But yeah, so the demon scampers off. She didn't kill it, I don't think.
No, she just scared him away.
Yeah, she scared it off, and then Hunt comes into the picture with his friend Isaiah, who's also an angel, and they are essentially slaves to Micah, the archangel that was being attacked by the demon, because they were angel rebels in a different archangel's squadron.
That rebelled.
Named Shahar, and Hunt was also her lover at one
point.
And
general, yeah.
And her general. They rebelled, and they lost, and Shahar died, and then Hunt got this halo barbed wire tattoo on his forehead, and he's now a slave to the archangel Micah, and also the Asteri, which are like the gods that prevail over
the entire
Midgard.
Planet.
There are 6 of them. There were 7. We'll get into that later as well.
Crack theories galore.
But they are just like these beings made of light, and we will also get into that later.
Made of starlight, they claim.
Stay tuned. But yeah, so that's how kind of our whole plot is incepted. And then there's a time jump, and Bryce is going to work at her boss's library antique store.
Right.
Her boss, Jessica.
Which we all learn to find out later is actually the Library of Parthos, big legendary library.
Yes.
So like Jessica, another character we have to eventually discuss, but more on the crack theory side a little bit later, because we don't know who she is, but there's so many theories. We don't know
what she is. We don't know how old she is. We don't know where she came from.
And we don't know why she's like besties with Idis, one of the princes of hell.
Strange stuff from Jessica. Danica. Back to Danica. So that's how Danica died. Then, after this time jump, the kind of plot of book 1 is sort of a murder mystery, in that it's not about Danica's murder necessarily, but there are more murders that are happening
that are similar to
Danica's and to what happened to Micah. And so Micah sends Hunt and some of the other angels out around to talk to people, especially Bryce, because she is like kind of a common denominator.
Right.
In this case, there was a vampire that she'd gone on a date with the night prior who ended up murdered after that, and they came to visit her at work at Jessica's to ask her some questions, because she was the only connection between the vampire and Danica and the archangel, and they're like, what is going on with this woman's involvement in these murders?
This girl has been in the wrong place at the wrong time.
Yeah.
over and over again.
So they don't tell her she's a suspect necessarily, but they ask her to join the case, and so our plot begins.
Right. So you have Hunt, who is literally a demon hunter for Micah as like a personal assassin in a way.
And his slave tattoo on his forehead binds him to, he cut some deal with Micah where he has to make 10,000 kills or something like that.
It's like 2,217 or something for every single life that his legion took in this rebellion. He owes back, and he's at like a whopping 82 after like 200 years of slavery. But Micah's like, if you solve this, I'll cut that down to 10.
Right.
So he is literally a demon hunter. This like plays right into his toolbox of what he does. And so they're like, you, demon hunter, hottie,
Umbra Mortis,
go to Bryce, who is kind of maybe a suspect, but also just like connected to everyone, networking queen, and figure it out.
Because she's like a half human, redhead, girly, she has a reputation for just being the party princess. So people don't think much of her.
And she uses that to her advantage, which
absolutely
we love. She uses
just like Paris Hilton. She's a businesswoman.
Right. And she hasn't she hasn't like gotten drunk, done light secret, like all those kinds of things. She hasn't been a partier in literally however many years it is, 3 years since Danica's death, but she still goes to clubs. She does business deals at clubs. She actually met the vampire for a business deal at the club when he then started getting like all handsy with her, and she was like, please get out. Actually, like, she just does not shatter that illusion and uses it to her advantage going forward, which,
yes, we love that.
Big slay.
And so with this murder mystery, they do a whole lot of investigating throughout. There's a couple of more plot elements that come in that play into the bigger, like, overarching series plot, whereas the murder mystery segment is kind of like book one subplot situation, but ties everything together. So Danica, our girl, she was just wrapped up into everything somehow. We come to find out, was a history major in college, and she was doing this project. This comes to light in book 2, but just to give the whole Danica story picture. She was a history major in college. She found out this information about the Asteri, this ruling god party made of starlight, where they came from, what kind of power they ran off of, their whole story, right? And she was also working with the human rebels that we learn about in book 2, including a human agent named Sophie.
Sophie,
it's time
Renast.
to get into Sophie as well. We'll continue our Danica problems throughout the story, but
Danica is probably the most relevant dead person ever. Sophie, second most relevant dead person ever.
Yeah.
And only because we only get introduced to her in book 2.
There's no way, at least I pray to the gods, okay, that the Sophie and Emile search plot arc from book 2 has some sort of payoff besides what we already got.
Like, I understand that we needed Sophie to help us connect the dots to that certain piece of information that leads Bryce to the room in the Asteri's palace that, like, shows her all the answers. I get that little tidbit, but we spent 1/3 of the second book going after not only Sophie and trying to figure out if she was dead or alive, but her brother Emile, because everyone's like, oh, he's
this powerful,
he's a Thunderbird just like Sophie. And then it turns out, A, he's not, and then B, Bryce off page after finding him. Off page gets him
so much off the page. Like, where does she get the time?
Adopted by her parents to just go live a cute little human existence with Ember and Randall, which, like, slay for Emile. Like, he's winning.
I have a feeling Emile is gonna come back. He has to.
He better. We spent about 256 pages. That's a estimate of book 2 looking for that kid.
Yeah, I mean, where we left off in book 2, we have Bryce, who, long story short, is in Prithian with the ACOTAR cast. Hunt, who is now back
in the Asteri
dungeon with his wings cut off again,
and a new tattoo, because the tattoo
in book 1 got
taken
removed
off and then is now put back on.
There's so much here. We're so sorry. This is gonna be all over the place, but This is why, like, if you
books.
haven't read this, just read it and then come back, because it's gonna be too much for it. We would be sitting here for hours if we tried to explain the whole plot and then delve into everything else.
Right. This is not a chronological plot recap. This is a brain dump of everything that is afflicting our minds because of this series. So, okay, so Hunt's got his tattoo back. Rune was also down there. So, like, I'm scared for bestie Rune because, like, he's been through some shit with his dad, but he hasn't been through, like,
he doesn't
Askeri
have the
type
grit
shit.
that Hunt has to have had from all of the shit that he's
Rune
been through.
looks like he has grit because, again, Skrillex and tattoos, but, like,
he's a princeling, okay?
He's a princeling. Also, I'm just going to say it right here. The fact that Hunt refers to Rune a couple times, like, mockingly as princeling, where then in Throne of Glass, Dorian gets referred to as princeling.
And they call Rhysand princeling.
It's just so good. And
they all look alike. They all have dark black hair,
sapphire
or purple eyes of some kind, and they all have shadow
magic. Like, okay, they're all related.
The connections are connectioning.
They're all related. Mathing. They're all related. Like, that is, I will die on this hill.
But I just want to denounce right now the ancestry theory. They are not related by each other. Like, Rhysand is not someone else's grandfather. And
no. They're all descended from the same.
They're descended from someone common, for sure.
And by common, we mean, like, in common, but very godly.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And I think Hunt also, we'll get into his lineage later as well, and our theories for that, but
yeah,
he has some sort of tie to Azriel. I know it.
Well, and it's just, there's a moment in Crescent City 1 in House of Earth and Blood where someone looks at Hunt, and I'm forgetting exactly who it was, even though I read it last night. Someone looks at Hunt,
like Thur.
and they look at Hunt and see that he's a slave, and they're like, huh. As if it does not make sense that someone like Micah could enslave someone like Hunt.
Correct.
So 2000% Hunt's daddy is probably like a prince of hell.
Want to add the Adis of it all? Adis, one of the princes
of hell. Maybe it was him. He was the one who looked at Hunt, actually, and was like, you're a slave.
Yeah, and he was also like, why aren't you using your power? Like, you have more of it. Why aren't you using it? And Hunt's like, what are you talking about?
Dude, I think Adis is such a slay. I kind of love him. I love him so much. Hunt literally describes him, like, his internal monologue describes him as a pretty boy.
And he is a pretty boy. He's described as, like, this cute little slender, pale blonde guy. And
pretty boy.
He shifts into a little white fluffy cat.
How can you not love the Prince of the Chasm literally being a white fluffy kitty cat? Stop it.
Yeah, it's pretty cute. Sarah, props for that one. Okay, where were we?
Can we also just, this is going to tie back into Danica though, because we've talked about Hunt at the end of Crescent City 2. We've talked about Rune. They're also down there with Baxian. Baxian is also getting in trouble with them. Baxian, who was Danica's mate. Again, going back to Danica, this girl had time to be a college student, find out that
do espionage,
be
part of the rebel cause, mate a bloodhound angel. Or is Baxian a bloodhound? No, she's
Danica
was a bloodhound.
Danica's a bloodhound because her daddy is Mordok,
who is
scary
King
as shit.
Bloodhound, scary man,
and also just like go out and party and be Bryce's bestie without
eat pizza and like egg on Bryce to make out with Connor and
run the pack of, or whatever, not the ox, run her pack of devils within
girl, like Danica was doing the most, and that's my main issue with her. Like, in theory, love the idea of a dead person having a huge bearing on all the stuff that happens, and we needed Danica at the end of Crescent City 1 for Bryce to make the drop when she did.
Iconic.
At the end of Crescent City 1, Bryce, our girl, is in a major bind where there is a gigantic attack from the Asteri happening. Most iconic battle scene of all time, in my opinion.
It's kind of like she's got this like twofold ending. She has the ending with Micah, and then once that's over, it's the city being attacked.
Well, the ending with Micah is the most iconic piece of literature I've ever read, and it is literature to me, you guys, because this woman takes an archangel, she traps him in her library, her bestie fire sprite Lahaba sacrifices herself for the cause.
R.I.P. Lahaba. Love her so much.
Pour one out for Lahaba. And then she somehow like uses the Star Sword and a shotgun to like kill Micah.
The Godslayer rifle.
Which, like,
shout out to having a sharpshooter stepdad.
And yes, and also just having it somewhere in Jessica's office somehow.
Jessica was like, you know what, I'm going to put it up, but I'm going to take it apart in 4 pieces so my clients are a little less intimidated. And then Bryce is like,
I can put it together.
You know,
Thanks, Randall.
That's a puzzle.
Yeah. And so, yeah, she kills that bitch after he monologues about all of his motives and everything that he's been on. That's
the funniest thing to me. Is
it's
how
hilarious, and it's a huge pet peeve of mine as well. Like,
but also, it's just like typical male arrogance where you have this powerful male character who assumes that there's no way he's gonna die. He assumes that he's gonna walk out of here alive. But at the same time, just to flex because he can, he spills his guts, all of his deepest, darkest secrets, everything. Micah does it, and then Regulus does it with Bryce at the end of Crescent City too.
And it happens in ACOTAR too.
It happens in ACOTAR with Highburn, like all of these really powerful males.
Happens with Amarantha too.
That's true. And then it just so happens that like, oh, you know, cute, Micah's entire diatribe is being like live streamed to the conference. Which honestly was hilarious. It's like, and can you hear me? Am I on mute? No? Let's go.
Yeah, at the conference is when Hunt's slave tattoo is removed for the first time by our queen witch Hypaxia, which we love. And she takes this tattoo off with her magic, and then Hunt's first act of freedom is to rip off Sandriel's head. And for reference, Sandriel is his ex-lover Shahar's twin sister, another archangel.
Who killed Shahar? Who killed Shahar? Her twin.
Right.
And so she's a piece of trash. She's a piece of trash.
So Hunt rips her head off and then flies in to help Bryce because they're at this like Asteri Summit conference thing outside of Crescent City at the Asteri Palace or whatever. And then Hunt has to like take this helicopter back.
Yeah, Fury shows up and is like, "Get in, bitches. We're going to Crescent City."
Yes, Fury is one of Bryce's besties who is a we don't know what Fury is.
A mercenary of some sort, yeah. we presume.
Assassin woman who looks a whole damn lot like Amryn.
But let's also just not forget that Amryn is just something trapped in a body.
Correct. We'll get into that. We'll get into that down the line. But yes. And so Hunt has to go save Bryce because first of all, Micah, this is so convoluted. Micah used.
But that's the point. These books are convoluted. Yeah. There's a lot going on.
Yeah. So before Bryce vacuumed up Micah, we didn't even finish that sentence. Micah got shot with the Godslayer rifle, and then Bryce incinerated him, and then used a vacuum to vacuum up his ashes.
Took her little cordless Dyson and decided to just vacuum his ashes up.
The dirt devil.
Like, yeah.
So, yes. But before Bryce vacuumed up Micah, he used the tattoo in her back, which was actually another Danica-ism.
Right. She had the time to go and find the horn, this mysterious object that
Luna's
is warded.
Horn. I don't think we've mentioned Luna's horn yet.
No, we actually haven't. And it's very important because it's present from basically the inception of the book. It goes missing and it incites.
It's part of the murder mystery plot.
Rune's looking for it. The Autumn King is obsessed by it, and we all know now. Like we've pieced together, the horn is the 4th item of the Dread Trove that Nesta goes on this massive hunt for.
That's unconfirmed, but like very much is been alluded to. There's no way it's not.
There's no way it's not.
In A Court of Silver Flames,
there's this moment where Lanthus, who is in the prison, shows Nesta this vision of what they would look like as a ruling couple because of their combined power. And she sees in this vision all of the items from the Dread Trove.
The first three. The Star Sword Gwydion, which has been missing from Prythian,
right,
for 15,000 years or whatever.
Yeah. And then there's this one item, and Rhys mentions that like the Dread Trove probably has a 4th item that has been lost, and she sees this like murky, blurry image of
something that looks like bone or something. Right, I think it was described as
is this 4th item, and it is like 99.9% sure the horn. Danica had somehow found the horn first, got it ground down to a powder, B, mixed with tattoo ink, C, and then got
Bryce drunk and tattooed it on her motherfucking back.
So Bryce is literally tattooed in horn ink.
Bryce is the horn.
Bryce is the horn, which is why every time they're like, if these demons are drawn to the horn, all we need to do is find the horn and the demons will come to us. No wonder they keep on coming to Bryce this entire time.
The horn,
She's
bitch.
literally the horn. Like, any demon looking for the horn was gonna kill someone around her because she is just the horn with an amulet necklace. So anyway,
yeah.
So where were we?
We're at
Micah shooting Bryce with energy of some sort.
We understand now. Bryce is the horn. Danica, somehow before her death, was able to find time in her busy schedule to go to Luna's temple and steal the horn from there. It was rumored, or I guess people thought it was broken, and Hypaxia was on this mission with Rune to figure out how they were going to fix it using magic, like heal the horn. Turns out the horn was gone. It's been tattooed in Bryce's back the whole time. It doesn't need healing. It works perfectly fine.
Even as a dust.
And so the way Micah is like, I want to open the gates of hell and bring all the demons here and like start fresh, I guess. I don't remember what his motive was.
I honestly don't either. But
it's not important.
Because he just royally fucks it up.
Well, and then he just gets incinerated and vacuumed up.
And then Bryce has to deal with it, just like every other...
This happens every time.
The women just always have to do the
cleanup. It's a tale as old as time. Like, we literally women cleaning up after men.
So Bryce is out here just fighting off a horde of demons.
Well, yeah. So before she vacuumed Micah up, he used his power, shot it into Bryce's back, and then the horn opened
all these
portal
rifts,
to hell.
These hell
essentially
portals.
Hell with one L. Hell being not just it's not a different dimension. We don't think it's another planet.
Right, and there are seven rings, layers,
can't name them
etc.
all for you, but Adis is a prince of one of them. They've all got a crown prince, blah blah blah.
Right.
We'll get into it way more in the next book. I think in book 3 we're going to learn a whole lot more about hell, because when at the end of book 2 Bryce now knows she's the horn, she's in the Asteri Palace, like her and Hunt have been practicing him using his power on her back to like do stuff. She can be a conduit for him, blah blah blah.
Basically, opening the rifts needs a lot of power, and she's got starborn power, we learn at the end of book 1,
which we'll get into in a sec with the drop.
But it's not enough. Like, she can't quite open rifts on her own, but Hunt has this like insane amount of lightning magic power, and so he's able to then at the end of book 2 do the exact same thing that Micah did and channel his own power into her to activate the horn.
Right. But they're not trained. Like, this all happens within the span of like a year, so she doesn't have any practice using this stuff, and she doesn't know what the hell she's doing at all.
Right. Like,
no pun intended, saying what the hell.
500 years to master his magic.
Yeah. And also like Faye around him to train him his whole life, premium schooling and all of that.
The Ivy Leagues of magic,
of course. And
teachers. Bryce
has not had such privilege, despite being the Autumn King's daughter. He's just a misogynistic piece of shit, so he didn't do anything to her.
I think there's a lot that he's probably hiding. He's been like doing these stupid experiments for a long time, and like, for what? Again,
there's like a Project Thur happening, and he
like,
has a bust
so
of
much.
Thur in his... Thur is a ancient thunder god. Like, he has a bust of Thur in his office, and Bryce looks at it and she's like, that looks like Hunt. And then like just that's it. Like, okay, Sarah. Anyways, so Micah uses Bryce's back to open these portals to hell. Demons come pouring out. The Asteri are attacking her because she just killed Micah. All this stuff. And so there's this huge battle scene. There's also gates all around Crescent City
for each of the neighborhoods.
In each of the 5 neighborhoods,
and they're all connected.
And the gates are connected. They used to use them sort of as like walkie-talkies, where
telecom systems.
Right, you like throw a coin on it or put your hand on it or something, and your voice projects to the other gates. And so Bryce like projects her voice to the gates, tells everyone to like
hide,
lock down, and she is like, if anybody can hear me, please like put your hand on the gate, because I'm going to make the drop, and I need you to anchor me, because she is in a bind and she needs more power.
She needs more power, and like, frankly, she needs her immortality. And so she undertakes what is perhaps the most epic drop ever.
Also, by the way, have to note, Hunt had gotten there to save her at this point, and he like gets a demon off her, but they shoot a brimstone missile, and then Hunt like literally gets blown to smithereens.
Yeah,
and
Hunt
just
is like in separate
almost
pieces.
Dead on the ground next to her, and she's like, I need to make the drop, and she tells him she loves him.
All this stuff. It's very Cassia and Nesta at the end of Wings and Ruin, honestly.
Indeed it is. And so Bryce is like, somebody put their hand on the gate right now. I'm making the drop. deuces. And then she starts doing it.
She descends into the depths of her power. And she literally like breaks the power scale.
Yeah.
And everyone, mind you, everyone.
Somehow Declan, the computer fairy,
I love Declan so much. Another crutch of Sarah's.
Another crutch of Sarah's. Resident hacker, Declan. He is one of Rune's fairy bestie guys, and he just so happens to be like a gay hacker. And he has a random boyfriend named Mark who's not important. But anytime they need something, they need to find the footage from the night Luna's horn went missing. Declan can get it. They need to hack into the Asteri security system so that they can turn off the camera so Bryce can get into the dungeon. Declan can do it.
Say less.
So Declan has been the one broadcasting, live streaming the Bryce demolishing Crescent City demon situation.
So everyone is watching her make this drop.
Yes, because she like FaceTimed someone and he's just like playing it on the big screen for
they're like, hey, can you Apple play this up to the big screen real quick?
Air playing, and then he also somehow has some sort of like drop power detector.
Right, he's got the meter. He's got the meter. Right, it's like a seismic wave, but like digital machine, and they're just like, we think she's gonna die because this is not it.
A half human, half fae woman drop past where the Autumn King's power was. Like she has theoretically attained more power than the Autumn King.
Than literally anybody
else. Anyone. And so she's at the bottom of this well, and who's there to anchor her but Danica?
Right, because she needs to at this point sprint back up, and the more power you have, the farther back you gotta go. So she needs to.
And if she doesn't get back up within a certain window of time, she's dead.
So you hit the depth of your power, and they're quite literally brain dead, like their heart stops or whatever.
One thing about Bryce is she's gonna take a risk.
Yes, exactly. So she's here making the riskiest,
most reckless decision
epic, but reckless nonetheless drop ever, because she's like, hold up, I need 6 minutes to do this, and then I'll save the city. Danica, the ghost of Danica, gives up the last shred of like her soul's existence to yank Bryce back up to life.
And when she does so, first of all, Danica has her whatever, like they call it second light, we learn in the second book. It's the remainder of her soul that lives in the bone quarter where all the dead people's souls go. There's also this whole thing about Bryce trading her place in the bone quarter for Danica's.
The whole bone quarter thing and like all of that really just, I feel like I got lost half the time.
Right. And so Bryce knows like if she dies, she's dead. Like Danica is, and they'll both just be dead and they're gone because she traded her place in the bone quarter, so she knows she's not going there if she dies. And now Danica's used her last shrapnel of power to get Bryce back up. So it's just this whole thing. It's somehow literally Danica's there, whatever. Bryce miraculously, of course, makes it back up. And when you make the drop, you donate some first light, which is like a drop of your power to the city, and you
actually donate the majority of it. They let you keep like a vial of it as like a memento, but you create a huge amount of, well, depending on how much power you actually have, you create a certain amount of first light.
It's like taxes,
right? And you just like give it to the government. And
they use
we're gonna have to talk about this, about the Asteri, like immediately after this, because we're talking about Bryce's first light. But she's got so much power that she basically becomes this big beacon of first light, healing hunt.
Yes, so because she's touching the gate, like this first light spreads across the whole city and like miraculously gets rid of all the demons and brings Hunt back to life.
Also, we should mention, remember when you said the whole thing about like the gates used to be like a little telecommunication system? You would put your hand, you donate a drop of power. She's basically like, the gates have been little by little like imbued with like drop after drop of power, and because she's making the drop at the gates, she gets all of that first light, which is why there's a phrase on the gates, like the city belongs to those, or like who give their lives to the city, whatever. There's like a whole phrase etched onto the gates, and this is exactly what it means. It's like everything that people have given to the city, like she is now giving her life for the city, and so all of the energy and all of the first light that has been imbued into these gates is now being given back to her because she is making the biggest sacrifice.
Right, and they're on like the power lines too, so
the ley lines. So she's like, she gets all of this just tourist first light.
Yes.
All of this tourist first light, essentially.
Exactly. And so then, happy ever after at the end of the first book, the Asteri are like, hey,
Just
we
keep it
see
quiet.
that you have so much power. Please don't use it. You can just chill with your angel boyfriend and he can be free, but don't do anything or else. And
they're
then
like,
you can
don't
just live
rock the
happily ever
boat.
after.
We'll make him a not slave anymore. Live your life.
Yeah.
And what we come to find out about First Light and the Asteri is that the Asteri are really not stars. They're not starlight. They are just shells, bodies that they have picked to inhabit, but they are just powered by First Light. And there are monitors in the like underground Asteri library level that are basically like your iPhone batteries, telling them what percentage battery
so
everyone's
funny.
at. And they are
It literally like has their nameplate on it,
and like
and it's like
72%.
50%.
Like, please. And so they are basically just god imposters.
And this is what Danica found out. This is
what Danica and Sophie were like corresponding about in code under like weird aliases. And Sophie had found the room where like all of the Asteri's secrets are just displayed on a whiteboard, basically. Like
oopsies, we went to this planet and it didn't really have anything good, so we moved on to this one, and
we drained it and then moved on again.
and they're like, Midgard is perfect,
Right. And they're like,
so-
we went to this other planet and they fought back.
right,
Which
we learn or we think is the Prithian planet
Yeah. And
from ACOTAR.
And now would be a good time to mention Silver Flames has a lot of lore where Rhysand just like gets on his High Lord pulpit and is like, well, here's this story about our ancestors and the wars that they fought. And Crescent City has a lot of lore about how the Northern Rift is a thing and where the Asteri came from, and Princess Thea and Peleus and all of this. And if you reread them, you realize that the ACOTAR and Crescent City lore, it's actually the same, but they just have like missing names for different people. So Princess Thea and Peleus like might not be remembered exactly the same way in each one, but you can tell that the actual characters are the same. So we then kind of learn, as Regulus is over here, like again on his like very, very male high horse of there's no way I'm gonna die and there's no way Bryce is gonna live to tell this tale. He tells her everything, spills his guts. And we are 99% sure, right, that the Asteri went to Prithian, tried to pillage it, and those Fae pushed them out.
Correct.
And that is why when Bryce gets to Prithian, there's this old language that they have in common. And of course,
Bryce just decided to pick up classics in college.
Of course, Bryce was just like kind of obsessed with the old language as a 13-year-old decided to teach it to herself so she could impress her daddy, who then hated her.
And now
then
hates her even more because she's rebellious against him.
Right.
He
But
set
thank
up this
God.
marriage to her with Cormac, who is the prince of the Avalon Fae. She's
my
the
God.
princess of the Valbaran Fae. And she
Cormac,
was
who's
like
secretly been in love with Sophie
the whole time.
and
And this whole thing.
Oh my God, so much. But
We have
anyway,
to also get into the mind bridge with Agent
there are
Daybright.
there are so many wonderful romance arcs, heartbreaking and otherwise.
In
But
book 2, yeah.
anyway, so Bryce just like randomly has this wonderful knowledge of the old language so that she can show up and magically talk to our
Rhysand.
our besties in
And
Prithian.
Amryn. Not everyone speaks this old language. It's just Rhys and Amryn.
Right. Rhys because he was educated as a High Lord.
And Amryn because she's old as hell.
Amryn because she's old as hell. She's from 15,000 years ago. And I'm going to
There's
go...
this big inference of 15,000 years ago is like when the Asteri like
tried
appeared.
to conquer this other right they tried to conquer this other fate planet. Like this 15,000 years ago is like I think when this big war happened.
Yeah, we're encroaching on crack theory territory.
You know what,
but
I'm just gonna go straight into crack
we're gonna
theory
get
territory.
into it. So we've kind of breezed through the who, what, just touch on when really briefly, and where. We'll kind of combine when and where. When this is all happening, we are learning, like, obviously unless the rifts are somehow like space-time portals where she's not only traveling through space to a different planet but also through time to a different time, we know based on the crossover that Bryce story is happening at the same time as the story from ACOTAR. And in fact, we'll get into crack theories now.
Yes.
There is a time when Nesta in Silver Flames,
at the very end,
she's using the harp. She's trying to save Feyre, and she like plucks the 26th string or something,
which is the string that stops time,
and is able to like save Feyre and give her childbearing hips or something. And herself. Let's not forget that she modifies her own pelvis at the same time.
Right. But not Elaine.
Not Elaine. Elaine, I mean,
which
tells us Elaine's not ending up with Asriel.
No, definitely not.
No. And I hope not, because Elaine is sweet girl. She's not Asriel girlfriend material.
No.
I'm sorry. Elaine, I don't care who Elaine ends up with, frankly. I just care that Asriel ends up with like Gwen or someone worthy of him.
We'll circle back to Asriel in a bit because there's crack theories we've got related to him.
Anyways, so
Nesta's over here plucking a harp. There's a lot of references because of the relevance of drugs too in Crescent City.
Oh my god, we haven't even gotten into the synth yet.
But there's a lot of like reference to feeling as if time is speeding up and slowing down, expanding and contracting. And we know that Nesta like messes with the harp a couple times because the different strings do different things. I think the thing I was thinking of was the moment when Bryce gets home, when Danica is murdered. Mm-hmm. She feels like time is like moving weird because she's on Lightseeker. Exactly.
But there could also be some sort of crazy like coincidental moment when Nesta plucked the harp.
Nesta plucked the harp. Exactly. So there's this like timeline overlap of like the end of Silver Flames and somewhere in Crescent City 1. We know that by the end of Crescent City 2, like Bryce lands on the lawn of the River House, and this is like now not well past by like all that much.
Couple months or maybe a year past the events of Silver Flames.
Yeah. And so chronologically, it looks as if the worlds are separated by space, but not necessarily time.
Yeah.
And so
same with Hell, which is where Bryce was trying to go to get Adis's help,
because she just assumes
launched through this portal that Hunt like shot power into her back in the Asteres palace chamber thing, and she ended up in Prythian.
Right, because every other time that anyone has like siphoned energy into her, it's opened portals to Hell and unleashed demons. So she figures, okay, if I can jump through it, I'll probably end up in Hell. And then she like wakes up on this like plush grass in front of a McMansion on a river.
Asriel picks her up and she's like, "Oh, this demon is sexy."
God, if I jumped through a portal and I thought I was going to Hell and I woke up surrounded by some like dewy grass, looking up into the eyes of a shadow daddy like Asriel, I would pass away. Pass away. Speaking of time, Amryn always talks about how she's like 15,000 years old, but refuses to say what she is.
She came from somewhere else.
She came from somewhere else.
Very important to note.
She was stuck in the prison.
She was stuck in the prison, and she's imprisoned in this body. She is not whatever body she's in. That is not who she is. Body.
She picked a body to inhabit, but she is something else. And we learn at the end of Crescent City 2 that it is exactly the same with the Asteri. They are just bodies that they are playing. They're basically playing house in these bodies, and they are first light driven parasites. Yes. And they have this seventh Asteri who they claim, because we all know history is written by
Sirius, I think is her name. Yeah. She's like their fallen sister, fallen angel, whatever they want to call her. But we all know history is written by the victors, and the Asteri on Midgard are the victors because they're in control. So they get to say whatever they want. So they claim that she was eaten essentially by killed by the Prince of the Pit, which is the lowest level of Hell. Mm-hmm. And they nickname him the Star Eater because the Asteri are considered to be stars, starlight, all that stuff. So they're like, no, like the Hell is bad. The princes from Hell are bad because they killed our sister. He ate her. And and if we hearken back to A Court of Wings and Ruin, there is this moment where, God, we got to talk about the Book of Breathings after this. Like, put a bookmark on that one. Mm-hmm. Where Amryn and Feyre are standing in front of the cauldron, and the unleashing spell for Amryn is what they've been working on. We just don't know it's the unleashing spell until like we're in the moment. So Amryn translates and speaks this spell. Feyre is the conduit of energy, blah, blah, blah. So much stuff about the female protagonist being
conduits for
a
energy.
powerful conduit of energy.
Yeah.
With Bryce having the horn, plus her
Feyre.
starborn power, plus Feyre being the conduit at the cauldron, plus Aelin had
You're gonna
something.
see, like everyone can pour power into these women. So Amryn jumps into the cauldron and she is unleashed and described as just literally a ball of light. And much like First Light, she's not infinite. She is finite and she peters out.
I pictured it as, if anyone has seen The Legend of Korra, there is a scene at the end of the second season where she is fighting, forget the names of the two. It's basically like yin and yang, like spirits. Mm-hmm. One is the spirit of darkness, one's the spirit of light, and it's Rava and something else. And Rava like lives inside of the Avatar. There's this whole mythology that I don't need to get into, but Korra essentially becomes like this giant like Statue of Liberty sized avatar of herself, and she's just like made of the light of Rava, and she's just having a fist fight in the ocean with the dark demon spirit that she's trying to put back into this tree of life to lock in there for another 10,000 years.
Amryn
And I
goes all
picture it
Korra,
as Korra,
basically.
because she starts out huge and she's fighting, and then she shrinks back down to normal size as her power peters out.
Yeah, and eventually like Amryn's essence, whatever this light is, which sounds a whole lot like First Light, is nothing. And Rhys I think it's Rhys who drags out Amryn's
from the cauldron.
Amryn's body. Yeah. This body that Amryn had
Rhys
chosen to live in.
Dies
Rhys,
at the end of,
oh my god.
Sarah,
Page
I love you so
666 of A Court of Wings and Ruin wrecked my life
Sarah,
for about 30 seconds until I kept reading.
I love Sarah as much as I love my literal biological mother, but she just needs to stop with these crazy, I love a happy ending, but like, girl,
The resurrections
are too much. The end of ACOTAR, Feyre comes back to life. The end of Mist and Fury, I don't think anyone comes back to life necessarily. How do they leave off?
Nesta and Elaine get dunked.
Nesta and Elaine get dunked in the cauldron. They're like fine or whatever, but then Feyre like breaks the bond. But we know that the bond's not actually broken.
Everything's fine. Cassian and Azriel get stabbed and shredded and all this, but they end up fine.
And then at the end of Wings and Ruin, Rhys dies
and comes back to
drags
life.
Amryn back to life with him. And then at the end of Silver Flames, like Nesta and Feyre both naturally have somehow Illyrian wing birthing canals.
There's just a lot.
So love that, girl. And then also at the end of Crescent City 1, obviously with Bryce bringing Hunt back to life after he gets shredded, like just so much convenient resurrection.
Yeah.
And like I love a happy ending as well, but let's mix it up. Right. That's all I'm saying.
So my point is, we get Amryn's body back, but she's just a body out. Now. She doesn't have this like essence power that even Rhys didn't really understand. Like no one talked about. So
dating
I think
the High Lord of the Dawn. No, not a High Lord. He's
like
a prince,
cousin or something.
Sure, yeah.
Varian, haughty, something like that.
Yeah.
But so I think all that to say, I think Amryn was whatever. The seventh Asteri.
I agree.
And I would like it on record that I sent that as an 11-minute voice memo to Natalie before she had even read Crescent City, because
I already knew that Bryce ended up in Prithian, so it was safe spoiler territory.
Mm-hmm.
But it's also like it's not a spoiler to say that there are 6 Asteri when there were once 7, because it's just true. And I'd read ACOTAR, so it wasn't spoiling anything else.
Right. And it's like very clear, like up front when you start reading Crescent City, it's not a secret that there was a 7th one.
Correct. They tell you right off the bat.
Yeah. They obviously are not going to say we had a sister who defected or however the hell Amryn ended up leaving, but which most likely coincided with this big war where like Thea and Pelion like fought off the Asteri. So Thea being the original Starborn, where Rune and Bryce get their heritage, get their Starborn power, all that fun stuff. Okay, so now that we're talking about Starborn and we're talking about Rune and Bryce,
yes,
the only people who can wield this Star Sword are people who are of this Starborn lineage.
And I want to note that the Star Sword to Bryce and to Rune, but more so to Bryce, has some like energy or like glow that
Yes.
like calls to them.
Right. And Rune actually notices this like aura
It,
around
like,
Bryce.
sings.
It sings around her. And he notices this aura of starlight around Bryce and this aura of starlight around his sword. But he's high off his ass and he's like, damn, drugs. But it's not that at all. And that's another thing you like notice during these rereads is like Rune will notice something like that and you completely like brush it off as like the mirth root. But it's not. It's this like inevitable starborn connection.
And it also not only is a starborn connection, but to me it screamed like calls to like all of the stuff from ACOTAR where like
maid calls to maid,
exactly.
object to fae, etc.
Cauldron to things that came out of the cauldron.
Right, exactly. So we've got Bryce and we've got Rune who both have starborn power in different amounts, but because of that, both of them are able to handle and wield this star sword. And we learn that the star sword, what we call the star sword in Crescent City, they call Gwydion in ACOTAR, and it is this long lost sword that is rumored to be the mate, if you will, to Truth Teller,
which is Azrael's dagger.
Right, which is Azrael's dagger. And the only way you can wield something that is, if we think that Truth Teller is therefore also starborn in some way, or like can only be wielded
to the starborn power,
connected to starborn fae, then we only stand to assume that Azrael has to have some sort of starborn lineage and power in him in some way.
I also want to add a secondary crack theory that we haven't really talked about all that much.
Ooh, please.
Which is, if there is starborn power and it has a twin, and the twin of the starborn power, the wielder of Truth Teller, is also a shadow wielder, there's got to be some sort of like light and dark sort of dichotomy, yin and yang situation between those two.
Right.
So I don't know if necessarily Azrael has starborn lineage, but perhaps something else entirely. Like you can't have stars, you can't have light without dark.
Interesting.
You can't have star without shadow or night.
Right. And we've gotten teasers of House of Flame and Shadow, which include mostly Nesta and Azrael. So it implies that they are both, more prominent in the connection to Midgard in some way.
And let it be also said, Nesta wielded Truth Teller. Or was it Elaine?
Elaine was given Truth Teller, but Nesta was the one who actually finished off the King of Hybern with it.
So Nesta killed the King of Hybern with the Truth Teller dagger, which tells us that
both
Elaine
and Nesta were able to use it. But
the Archeron sisters have some sort of whatever birth lineage Azrael has. They have some essence of that. Perhaps this is another theory why I think Azrael and Rhys are somehow related.
I think they have to be, but like trace back really far.
Yeah, Feyre has a drop of Rhys's power.
Yep.
Nesta and Elaine were both made in the cauldron.
Yep.
There has to be a connection between the cauldron and Rhys himself and the ancestor that Rhys and Azrael may or may not share.
Right. No, exactly. And like the cauldron, things that are made in ACOTAR, she again, like Sarah uses the same phrase, like calls to like. And then in Crescent City, it refers to the starborn, like calls to like.
Yeah.
And so there's got to be a connection there somewhere. Like the cauldron, what is it? Like, is it the starlight? Is it, the same kind of starlight that Bryce has? So when you get dunked in the cauldron or whatever, I don't know. There's so much that could be, that could come from this. But like, long story short, we think Azrael is related to the gods in some way, because if Thea is the original starborn, then like her lineage, her descendants somehow, we know that the High Lords are like the descendants of the gods. Like that's why they're High Lords, and that's how they figure out who the next High Lord is going to be after and after and after, is like through this lineage. And so it just stands that Azrael must be connected in some way. And
Agreed.
We don't know who his dad is. We don't. Same way we don't know who Hunt's dad is. There's so much lineage coming for us in Crescent City 3.
Yes, I'm referring to our 11-page notes to pick up the next selection of crack theories that kind of ties to this.
While you're looking, I'm just going to throw a quick one out there.
Please.
I want to talk about the tattoos, okay? So Hunt has this tattoo, obviously the like slave tattoo on his brow, and it's this like dark ink, and it is described as like, even in the light, it seems like it sucks up light, and somehow it like restricts power, right? It inhibits his own magic. And something very similar happens in the Throne of Glass world in Rifthold, where there is essentially a system of like wordstone towers that create this like triangle, and within the triangle you cannot use magic. We know from Crescent City that you can grind up a horn and make it into a tattoo. Like, why can't you grind up wordstone and put that into tattooing and use that to throttle magic within a person? So I think that the slave tattoos, specifically the halo of thorns that the angels get, that Hunt has, are wordstone ink.
Additionally, I want to add Brimstone from Crescent City is a magic killer. Mm-hmm. We know they don't refer to things as the same stuff across universes, even if it functions and appears almost exactly the same. Like in ACOTAR, they winnow, which is teleportation, and in Crescent City, they teleport. They just call it teleporting.
Right.
So there's something there for sure. I think Brimstone could be the analog in the Crescent City world to Wordstone from Throne of Glass.
I like this.
There are so many other parallels like this, though, that they're just too many to rattle off or count. But one that kind of ties back into the lineage stuff is the Autumn King and the Autumn Court.
Yes.
And shadows versus fire, flame and shadow.
Ooh.
There's going to be secrets revealed about those sorts of connections. There has to be something there where, like, the Autumn King doesn't have firepower, but his children are starborn, and Rune has shadows.
But shadows are very Avalon.
And they're all, I mean, Rune's not a redhead, but Bryce is a redhead, and the Autumn King is a redhead.
Yeah.
Then the whole Autumn Court are all redheads. Lucian, like, has lineage that is not the Autumn King.
Right.
Or the High Lord of the Autumn Court Baron. There's some familial tie down that line somewhere, and I think there is going to ultimately, plus there's Aelin has fire, and there's flame and shadow connections.
There's fire
somewhere,
everywhere. Yeah. And like, why do we only have autumn in the Crescent City world?
That's my other thing.
Why do we only have that?
Why do we only have autumn? What's the difference between the Avalon Fae and the Volbaran Fae, which is the Autumn King versus Cormac's dad? What is Cormac's power even? He just teleports and chills.
Well, there's a reference in the beginning to Rune saying, like, his shadows actually come from the Avalon Fae lineage because his mom was Avalon Fae. And so he's like, that is why he thinks is part of why
Flame
his dad.
and shadow.
Yeah. He's like, that's why I think his dad, he's like, that's why I think he hates me, is because I didn't get his firepower. I got these shadows from, like, my mom's side, which makes, and the mind speaking. The mind speaking. God, mind speaking is so hot.
Speaking of mind speaking and Rune.
Oh my God, we're about to talk about the mind bridge.
We haven't gotten to the mind
bridge
Agent Day,
yet. Agent Night, the mind bridge. Holy smokes.
So there's a part in Crescent City 2 where Rune
starts playing spy, basically.
He's given this communication crystal walkie-talkie device that there's an agent by the name of Daybright on the other end who is part of the rebel cause, but we don't know who she is. And Rune starts talking to her on the mind bridge. He basically, like, goes into a meditative state, and then an avatar of him appears in this, what I pictured as just like a black void, and he speaks to this woman who's doused in fire.
Right. Flame and shadow.
And they are talking about espionage and just all of the good stuff that's going on, and then eventually they get real comfortable around each other, and a couch appears in the mind bridge, and they start vibing on the couch. Then we ultimately get the reveal that Agent Daybright on the other end is none other than Lydia Servos, aka the Hind, who is a deer shifter that works for the Asteri.
Yeah.
And
let it be known, she's fire in when, you know, she's with Rune, and she's a deer shifter in Throne of Glass. Aelin is the queen of Terrassen and Terrassen, I don't know, whatever. And and their kind of symbol is the stag. Like,
Sarah, you're not slick.
Like, we see it, and her power is fire. Like, that is her magic.
But Lydia is also a half witch, or she's a full witch.
She's like half sisters with Hypaxia.
Yeah, she's half sisters with
some
Hypaxia, who's a full witch and who's the queen of the witches.
Yeah,
there's more to come there, I'm sure, but that's kind of all we know so far.
Yeah, and Lydia does this thing at the very, very end where she unlocks their manacles when they're down in the Asteres dungeon, so that Bryce can get out and they can like shoot so Hunt can shoot energy into her back and blah blah blah, send her through the rift.
But she got out of that without being caught. Like,
right.
She's still in the good graces of the Asteres.
Right. So she, like, her cover is not blown.
Yes. Everyone else is screwed. Poor Rune. But I'm sure Lydia will take good care of him.
No,
as best as she can.
Lydia's got to be the go-between now to like somehow get them out. I'm scared for Rune. As Sarah has said, we should be. I am scared for Rune.
I'm scared for Hunt too.
I'm scared for Hunt. It's not that I don't care about Baxian, but like my boys Hunt and Rune are just my heart hurts. But what I think is so funny is that like the very, very, very end where Bryce ends up in Prithian, like we're so excited for that. I almost sometimes forget that like Hunt and Rune are about to like go through hell. I'm going to talk about hell for 2 seconds.
And then we can wrap things up with our crack theories about our favorite hell ally, Jessica.
Yes. So let's start with what hell is. Hell has like 7 realms, as Natalie mentioned earlier. Idis is the prince of the chasm, which is, I believe, the 5th. There are 2 more. The last one is the pit. There's no light in the pit. Like, everything lives in the dark. These demons that come out of there like don't even have eyes because there's nothing to see, and it comes across as something very, very, very similar to what Maeve, who is in Throne of Glass, what she describes as the planet she and the Valg came from. That's all I'm gonna say. Partially because I don't want to ruin everything for Natalie, because
I'm still
that
reading
is
Throne of Glass,
part of the journey she's on right now. But the Valg are a huge, huge, huge part of that whole journey, and Nat, you'll hear about them in Heir of Fire. They bleed black, like all of this stuff, and when you finally get like this more information about the backstory of where they actually came from and the planet and the description of the planet, it just sounds very much like the pit. So whoever they refer to in Crescent City as the Star Eater, the Prince of the Pit, what was his name? Apollyon. Like, is Apollyon one of the Valg princes that we see in Throne of Glass, or is he like their daddy? Who knows? We certainly don't. Is Maeve described as a queen? Maeve is she's like the queen of the Fae.
Curious.
And she's the one who tells who talks about where the Valg came from and describes their planet.
But is Maeve a Valg herself?
You have to stop asking me questions where if I lie to you, if I don't want to spoil it, I have to lie to you. I'm just gonna no comment that one.
Okay, because my wheels are now turning. Like, is Apollyon a man?
There are multiple deities of the Valg.
We'll get there. Anywho's, we know that there is a Star Eater, and there is definitely a connection between Throne of Glass and Crescent City.
And like, look, we all think the princes of hell are supposed to be like cringe, but we know from Idis that they can be pretty. So
they can be slay.
And they can be slay. So somewhere in the universe of characters that we have might be hidden in plain sight the Prince of the Pit, is all I'm saying.
I'm excited to find out what that might mean.
Yeah.
And if it's Azriel.
Oh my God. Stop it.
Sorry, had to throw it out there. Or if Azriel's at least like an offspring of that.
Well, I think Hunt might be
for sure.
descended from a prince of hell.
Because there's been speculation about Hunt having demon in his lineage at some point along the line. Then there's the third connection of him having similarities both with his lightning power and his appearance to the thunder god. Lots of speculation about Hunt. We've been promised lineage information about Hunt and Azriel in House of Flame and Shadow, so excited.
I am
to learn.
Excited.
My favorite 2 winged men. And yes, they are my favorite 2 winged men. Okay, I'm so sorry to the Cassian girlies. I love my Rhysand, but Hunt and Az just have a special place in my heart.
Well, look, I think
Hunt is just Ken, and
Hunt
Azriel
is the Cassian of the Crescent City universe. I just would like to put that out there.
I think that's true in a sense, but Hunt just has this, like, I don't know, there's something about him
It's
that's
the fact
so
that he
endearing
answers
to me.
with whatever to like 3 questions on the
Sassy
same page.
boy.
He's just like an annoying teenager half the
The
time.
shower scene just did something to me as well.
Oh my god, that really hurt me.
There's
deeply.
a scene where Hunt has come back from a mercenary assassin mission for Micah in the first book.
He's just down bad.
And
Like he's not doing well.
He's in his emo boy hours in the shower, just like sitting on the ground, and Bryce, fully
Literally
clothed, comes
washes
in
him.
and washes him.
And we
it's
all
really
know, we all know if you listened to literally one lick of what an English teacher said in high school, that any scene where someone is getting washed is like baptism, right? Like it's symbolic. It's so symbolic.
Yeah.
Whether you're walking through the rain or like you're in a shower or you're in the ocean in some body of water. When Nesta and Cassian go to the lake,
The
like
cauldron.
bodies of water are healing. It's like, symbolic
Or just
of baptism,
like rebirthing in some
rebirth,
way,
cleansing, all this stuff.
or not cleansing, or making you worse like Nesta, or making you decay like that other princess lady.
Right. But the cauldron's also like not water. The cauldron is like probably,
I would argue it's still a baptism reference
of some
though.
sort. Yeah.
Let's wrap things up with Jessica.
Yeah. Who the hell is this woman?
Who is this woman? How is she going to become the new Danica, in the sense that she's
Orchestrating
I can just tell,
everything.
based on the end of Crescent City 2, this scene, I don't remember if it's an epilogue or it's like the final chapter.
Yeah. Her and Idis
have a little
sitting on a
convo.
park bench or something.
They decide they need to move the library again.
Yes.
They've moved the library to a new undisclosed location. We still do not know what Jessica is, but we know that she is rich as hell, old as hell, undisclosed how old she is as well.
like literally owns the Library of Parthos.
Owns the Library of Parthos. We don't know where she came from. We don't know what she is.
Right,
We don't know what her
right.
powers are. She's obscenely connected.
Well, so she's described in as vague but also similarly feared and powerful terms as Amryn was in
Yes.
in the
Yeah,
ACOTAR world.
that's fair.
Yeah. Like no one knows who, what.
She still
All
has
of that.
like a shred of benevolence in her, but only when there's something in it for her. Like
Right.
in the sense that she loaned Bryce a whole lot of money to offer herself up to save Hunt.
Yeah.
When he was being sold like back into slavery to Sandriel at the end of Crescent City, or closer to the end of Crescent City 1. And she gave Bryce the money, but she also expected like a lifetime of indentured servitude essentially for it. Same thing with Syrinx. She let Bryce adopt Syrinx,
Right, but she's on a payment plan.
She's on a payment plan for that.
Again, same as Amryn. Like she's living life and like they do things that are nice.
Yeah.
And they do have morals in some capacity and they do care for the people around them in some capacity, but there's just this big like gaping mystery and you literally cannot answer the who, what, when, where, whys of anything related to them.
Yeah.
So Jessica is this big black hole. And I think what you're getting at is that she's going to become like, it's going to come to light that she is an orchestrator of a lot of the events that have led us here.
Or yeah, and she's been around since the days of the mythology in the past. Somehow, like, how did she collect all of these antiquities throughout time?
Right.
Like, she's not just buying them on the black market. She's the perpetrator and the purveyor of them.
Right. Including the Book of Breathings, which we mentioned earlier.
Including the Book of
When
Breathings.
Amryn jumps into the cauldron and unleashes herself, she goes in there with the Book of Breathings. She turns into her like little first light firework thing. She comes back out and it's a human body or whatever, fae body, but the Book of Breathings is nowhere to be seen. The cauldron is some sort of portal, maybe.
For sure.
Right? Like the Book of Breathings then randomly ended up back in Midgard somehow? Like, and Jessica has it.
AKA, like, there's no way that the cauldron isn't a portal if there's only one copy of the Book of Breathings.
Right.
So that's all I'm saying. But we don't know what Jessica is. I think she is Jessica. She
could be Jessica to us.
That's my girl Jessie. Some sort of witch goddess thing. I genuinely, like, we haven't gotten enough hints for us to really even know. We know she knows Adis on a personal basis, but we don't know what their dealings are. We know they're both old as shit, and we know she likes money. And that's it, guys. We
Right.
don't know.
We don't
anything
know.
else.
And there's information Sarah has yet to reveal to us, and therefore we can't make conjectures yet on such little information, but who she is, who Hunt is, really.
And I think she's also going to have to play a major role in how Bryce gets back to Midgard.
Right. That is another big thing that we haven't really talked about, is like, we're all excited that Bryce is out here, like, you know.
But like, ma'am, the portal she opened is closed. How the
someone's
hell is
gonna
she gonna
have
get back?
to-
She doesn't know how to navigate these portals. That's how she ended up in Prithian in
Right.
the
She
first
thought
place.
she was going to hell. So someone can shoot energy into her back. No problem. Like, I'm sure.
Someone's got it.
I'm sure it's Feyre.
It's probably Feyre. Oh.
They're probably going to be like, ooh, we need light. Like, let's get our bestie, the High Lady of the Night Court, to channel some day energy, some day magic, and like bust Bryce
who I
through
would
the portal.
love to come back and play a big role in this?
Who?
Helion.
Helion is such a daddy.
We need Helion to come back and shoot the light energy into Bryce.
Well, isn't Helion the one who knows a whole bunch of stuff about?
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, he's the one that like knows the legends.
Yeah, Helion
all the time.
I think he's the oldest.
He's the
presiding
one who had
Baron.
the most extensive library,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so he's the one who had, like, when Rhysand was like, Feyre's gonna die because she can't birth my child. They went to Helion to look and see if he had any medical texts.
The tea.
And
he didn't, unfortunately, but
Right.
Nesta figured it out. So it's
Right,
all
Nesta
good.
said, "Hold on, I got a harp."
Let me just pluck this string right here. Which another thing, they've all got a niche hobby.
They really do.
Of art of some sort. Feyre paints, Nesta dances, Bryce dances, Aelin plays the piano. They're all artsy fartsy girlies.
All of our girlies have a creative outlet. You know, I think it's also worth mentioning, we know Lucien's last name. We know that, like, Lucien's family name is Van Sarah. And correct me if I'm wrong, Nat, I don't think we've heard any of the other High Lords' last names.
We don't know anyone else's last name.
Right.
We know Feyre's last name.
We know Feyre's last name because she's just a human.
Yep.
So we've got Archeron and Van Sarah, but like, we really don't know anybody else's last name. And I think obviously Sarah has left a lot of things out because there are going to be now these new familial connections drawn in Crescent City 3, which a lot of the Throne of Glass characters do have last names. So like, are we going to see Dorian's last name Haviliart? Are we going to see that like pop up somewhere? Like, who's connected to whom?
We know the Danon last name.
Yeah. And like, Hunt has a last name, but we're also up in the air about who his dad is. So like, where did ALLLL come from?
Right. We also don't know who Azriel's dad is.
No, he doesn't have a last name either. I mean, neither does Cassian. None of these dudes have last
The
names.
Illyrians don't have last names.
No, and it's like Madonna. Like, they just that's it.
Exactly.
They're known by one name.
Just Ken.
Just Ken.
They're all just Ken.
That's
to
it.
me.
So
Rhysand has to have a last name somewhere in there too. Quinlan, we know, is Bryce's mom's last name.
right, very, very human. Again,
That
like
tracks.
Archeron.
Danica's got a last, like, they've all got family names in Crescent City, so it would follow suit that there's some family connections somewhere along the line, or some hints at least in ACOTAR that we can pick up on.
Right. So all that to say, I think we're just going to be looking out for a lot of last names in Crescent City 3.
Also, like Hunt, for example, with the mating bond, like, we didn't know if angels could mate or not. That's like a fae and wolf thing.
Right. And like, you can mate outside of your species, whatever you want to call it.
So
wild.
it's like, if Hunt felt the mating bond, is he part fae?
There are so many possibilities. There are so many possibilities.
So mysteries to be unraveled, I pray, in Crescent City 3.
I just want my mind to be blown, and I feel like everyone is expecting so much out of this book, and
it's a thick one, so we should get some answers at least.
And there are two authors I feel like will never disappoint us when it comes to mind-blowing
crack theories
twists. and those two are Sarah J. Maas and Rebecca Yarros. And so I have no doubt in my mind that Sarah will deliver with some absolute just genius, mind-bending, mind-blowing realizations that we're about to have. Some of them we might not even know to expect that we're going to realize things because she just hasn't set all of those up in ways to be like obvious for crack theories.
As Kylie Jenner once said, this is the year for realizing things and realizing stuff. And I think that's real.
You know, I think no one has ever said it better. That is very articulate.
And with that, that's the end of our Crescent City 1 and 2, House of Earth and Blood, and House of Sky and Breath recap, review, and chat. It was a little discombobulated and all over the place, as the books are.
But I think, again, that is 100% the point. Like, these books just were all over the place in the best possible way.
They're such a fun mess. I can't wait to clean up the fun mess of House of Flame and Shadow in just a few weeks and unpack it with you on this couch.
Literally been waiting for this. I have avoided reading other books that do not have the sequels out because I can only have so many cliffhangers living in my brain at any given time. And this one has afflicted me for so long. And I cannot even begin to describe how excited I am for this book and how much I am going to ignore the rest of the world when it comes out.
Well, PTO has been taken. We're ready. The book is coming out on January 30th. Our episode recap and review, similar to this one, all about Crescent City 3. We'll see how right we were about some of our theories.
Right.
Will be out on February 14th, Valentine's Day.
So you guys have 2 weeks.
So you have 2 weeks to read.
You have 2 weeks
Get
to
on
read it. We'll be reading it in 2 days, most likely. We are going on a tour of Walmarts. We're going to Barnes and Noble.
Yep, we'll take you around with us.
We're going to Targetto.
We'll take some vlogs along the way. So follow us on TikTok and Instagram at thedownlore to see our release day content
Shenanigans,
and to stay plugged into what episodes we have coming up. Make sure to subscribe to us on YouTube, and if you're listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, make sure to follow us, give us a rating.
Yeah, and hey, if you have any
share
crack
this
theories
with your friends,
if you have any crack theories you want us to hear about before we go into our Crescent City 3 episode recap, like email us thedownlore@gmail.com,
or just shoot us a cheeky DM.
That too.
Either way, we're chronically online, so
yeah,
we'll
and we're both chronically online and chronically thinking about books.
Yes.
So it will not be a disturbance, merely a continuation of the thoughts we are already having in our brains at any given moment.
Indeed, I concede.
All
right, guys.
Crack theories to the moon. Let's go.
Crack theories to the moon. See you in 2 weeks for Crescent City 3. Can't wait.
It's time to realize some things.